Imagine this, if you will. Picture the dazzling sparkle of diamonds in Surat's workshops, or maybe the rhythmic hum of textile looms, in Ahmedabad and Surat. For so long, these have been such vibrant symbols of India's prosperity, really driving growth, lifting countless families. But right now, you need to sort of shift that image. Picture a sudden dark cloud gathering over this really vibrant landscape. We're not just talking about a forecast here. We're talking about an unprecedented economic storm that hit just yesterday, August 27, 2025. The United States, which is India's largest export market, suddenly imposed this staggering 50% tariff on a huge range of Indian goods. This isn't like just a bump in the road. It feels more like a seismic shift, doesn't it? Threatening to dim the shine of Gujarat's economic powerhouses.
It really is. What we're witnessing, it's a profound reordering of global trade. And right at its epicenter are millions, literally millions of livelihoods. And that 50% figure, it's not just out of thin air. It's an initial 25% levy announced back in July 2025, and then compounded by an additional 25% penalty just last month, directly linked, as you hinted, to India's continued purchase of Russian oil. So this deep dive, it's really about unpacking the origins of this crisis, its immediate and, frankly, far-reaching impacts on critical industries, on the people behind them, and also exploring the resilience, of a nation determined to weather this storm.
Right. So what does this all actually mean for the intricate web of global supply chains, for those skilled artisans, the hardworking families, and, well, for India's place on the world economic stage? Let's dive in. Okay, let's set the scene properly for you, Buzran. It's long been this beacon of India's industrial strength, hasn't it? Think about Surat, they affectionately call it the Diamond City. This isn't just any city. It's where over 80%
Right.
of the world's rough diamonds get polished. It's this incredibly intricate network of cutting, polishing units, employing nearly 1 million workers just in that region alone. It's staggering.
And it's not just the glitter, is it? The textile sector, with major hubs like Ahmedabad and Surat, that's equally vital. It produces a really significant share of India's fabric exports, everything from, vibrant cerise to really innovative, eco-friendly knitwear these days. What's truly critical to understand, I think, is that these two industries, they're not just economic drivers in isolation. They're deeply woven into the social fabric, supporting millions of families. So when a shock like this tariff hits, it's not just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's really about daily wages. It's about school fees, the very stability of entire communities.
Exactly, and the scale we're talking about. India exported an impressive $86.51 billion worth of goods to the U.S. in the fiscal year ending March 2025. The U.S. market absorbs almost 20% of India's total goods exports. So yeah, for a 50% tariff to hit these specific vital sectors, it's not a small ripple.
No, it's a tidal wave, absolutely, especially for those communities in Gujarat.
Now, let's zoom in a bit. Surat's diamond industry, you can almost picture it, can't you? A bustling workshop there.
Yeah.
Maybe you can hear the soft whir of the spinning wheels. Skilled artisans, some with decades of experience, meticulously turning rough stones into these dazzling gems. It's more than a job for many. It's a craft, often passed down through generations. And the economic contribution, remarkable. About 7% of India's entire GDP comes from this industry, employing around 5 million workers nationwide. And just for perspective, think about this. In 2024, the U.S. market alone bought $10 billion worth of Indian gems and jewelry.
10 billion.
Yeah, that's nearly 30% of the entire sector's global sales going to one market.
And here's where the deeper impact really, really hits home. With these new tariffs, the duties on diamonds, they've just spiked dramatically. They went from a manageable, 2.1%
Oh,
to a staggering 52.1%.
52%.
Wow. Right. This isn't just an additional burden, which is how Rajesh Mehta, the executive chairman of Rajesh Exports, described it. It's a potential crippler for the whole industry. We've heard directly from people on the ground. Like Jagdish Prajapati, a 49-year-old diamond polisher. He's got 2 decades of experience. He put it perfectly, I thought. He told us, we were already struggling with slowdowns from the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, these tariffs are like a hammer blow.
Hammer blow. Yeah, you can feel the weight of that.
And the Diamond Workers Union Gujarat, they estimate nearly 100,000 jobs have already been lost, just vanished. In regions like Saurashtra, that includes Bhavnagar, Amreli, Junagadh, it seems the smaller units are really bearing the brunt of this.
So what's the immediate consequence of that astronomical jump in costs? I mean, the math must be just grim for those small and medium enterprises, right?
Yeah.
They dominate Surat's diamond trade, don't they? Operating on, like, razor-thin margins already.
Precisely. Grim is the word. What we're seeing is U.S. buyers rapidly turning to competitors.
Where are they going?
Places like Israel, where tariffs are lower or non-existent. Or maybe countries that are part of the Generalized System of Preferences, the GSP. This isn't just threaten jobs, although that's devastating enough. It threatens India's long-established role, its dominance, really, in this part of the global industrial value chain.
So it's a rapid, almost forced reevaluation by international buyers. They're just looking elsewhere
Yeah,
immediately.
immediately. Yeah.
Okay, let's shift focus slightly, moving from the sparkle of diamonds to the vibrant world of textiles. The story in Gujarat's textile hubs, Ahmedabad, Surat, seems equally troubling. This sector, including hubs elsewhere like Tamil Nadu's Tirupur, it accounts for a huge chunk of India's, about $8 billion in textile exports to the U.S.
That's right, 8 billion. And millions depend on this. Many of them are low-skilled workers, often relying on daily wages, very vulnerable.
So now imagine the impact. Duties on ready-made garments jumped from, 13.9%?
Yes, 13.9%.
To 61%. And you mentioned it can reach up to 59-64% with additional most favored nation duties.
That's correct. And just to clarify for everyone listening, most favored nation or MFN duties are the standard non-discriminatory tariffs the U.S. applies to most trading partners. So this additional layer on top of the 50% general tariff, it just makes Indian textiles prohibitively expensive, especially compared to rivals.
Like Vietnam and Bangladesh.
Exactly. Vietnam and Bangladesh face tariffs around 19-20%, much, much lower.
19 versus 60. Okay.
The immediate concern, of course, is what happens to the people caught in this shift. We heard from Geeta Patel, a 35-year-old seamstress in Surat. She expressed this profound sense of dread, really. She asked, "My family depends on my income. If orders keep drying up, how will we pay for food, school fees, or rent?" It's heartbreaking.
Absolutely. That's the human cost right there.
And the data, unfortunately, confirms her fears. Between January and June 2025, so even before the full 50% hit, India's textile exports to the U.S. fell. They went from $860 million down to $770 million monthly. Meanwhile, Vietnam's exports surged 18.5% to $8.54 billion in the same period.
Wow, a direct shift.
A very direct shift. The Apparel Export Promotion Council estimates that up to 200,000 jobs could be lost in India's textile belt because of this. And we're already seeing companies, big ones like Pearl Global, they make garments for U.S. brands. They're apparently offering to shift production.
Shift production where?
To their factories in Bangladesh, Indonesia, or Vietnam specifically to avoid these tariffs.
It really does sound like a direct funneling of business away from India. Is there any way to mitigate such a sudden astronomical price disadvantage, especially when countries like Vietnam have such a clear edge with those lower tariff rates already?
That's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? Mitigation is tough when the gap is that wide.
Okay, we've seen the brutal impact on the ground, in Surat, in the textile hubs. But the crucial question remains, I guess, why? Why this sudden, really aggressive move from the U.S., and why now? Was this completely out of the blue, or have these tensions maybe been simmering for a while?
Well, that's where we get into the geopolitical chess game we mentioned earlier. The roots of this crisis, they lie in this complex interplay of geopolitics and trade policy. As we sort of outlined at the start, this 50% tariff, remember, the combination of the initial July levy and the August penalty, it was directly linked to U.S. President Donald Trump signing Executive Order 14329. That order, specifically titled Addressing Threats to the United States by the Government of the Russian Federation, was signed on August 6, 2025.
Right.
And the order explicitly cited India's continued purchase of Russian oil as, quote, enabling Russia's war efforts in Ukraine. That was the official justification.
So it's clearly a strategic play, using trade as leverage to pressure nations over their foreign policy choices. But couldn't one argue this risks alienating a really crucial partner like India, potentially pushing them closer to other blocs, maybe? Is this aggressive economic leverage, as they called it, truly effective in the long run? Or is it a calculated risk with potentially significant blowback?
It's absolutely a calculated risk. Vice President J.D. Vance, in a statement around August 24, 2025, explicitly described these tariffs as aggressive economic leverage. The stated goal was to force Russia to halt its military actions by hurting economies seen as supporting it. From the U.S. perspective, the idea is to create these economic pain points.
Okay.
India, however, maintains its position quite firmly. They argue that purchases of Russian crude, which actually resumed in September 2025 after a brief pause, are critical.
Critical for what, specifically?
For stabilizing domestic fuel prices and supporting its, 1.4 billion citizens. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, speaking at a rally in Ahmedabad, also around August 24th, struck a very defiant tone. He emphasized that India will, quote, continue to increase its strength and protect its citizens and entrepreneurs. Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal has echoed that resolve too, saying India will take all necessary steps to secure its national interest.
So a clash of national interests, essentially. But amid all this, I'm curious, are all Indian exports getting hit equally by this 50% tariff? Or has the U.S. been maybe more strategic in what it's choosing to target?
That's a really critical point, and it reveals the strategic calculation behind this. It's definitely not a blanket tariff hitting everything.
Okay, so what's exempt?
The U.S. has strategically exempted key sectors, things like pharmaceuticals, electronics, and petroleum products. Combined, these account for a substantial $27.6 billion, or about 30% of India's exports to the U.S.
30% is a big chunk.
It is. India's pharma sector, for example, exports about $12.7 billion to the U.S. It remains a powerhouse there, still competing very strongly with European suppliers, so that's untouched.
That's fascinating. So they're not cutting off their nose to spite their face, so to speak. There's a clear calculation here. Protect their own crucial supply chains while still applying pressure where it hurts India's competitive edge in other areas.
Precisely. That's the key insight, I think. This isn't just about punishing India randomly. It feels more like a surgical strike. By exempting critical sectors like pharma and electronics, the U.S. protects its own economic arteries. But by targeting labor-intensive areas, textiles, diamonds, even some auto components, it forces India into this brutal price competition, especially with lower tariff nations like Vietnam and Bangladesh.
So there's nuance even within sectors like auto components.
Yes, exactly. Parts for passenger vehicles like SUVs and sedans, they face a lower 25% tariff. That somewhat spares exporters like Star and some Varden Motherson. But components for commercial vehicles, the heavy-duty stuff, like those produced by Surat Forge for clients like Caterpillar and John Deere, those face the full 50% levy.
Right, so it's targeted pressure.
Very targeted. It's a clear message. Diversify your markets, modernize your export profile quickly, or risk becoming a less attractive partner in these traditional labor-intensive sectors. This isn't just a tariff, it's acting as an accelerator for a global supply chain realignment.
Given this enormous pressure, India, the Indian government, they're certainly not just standing still, are they? What kind of strategies are they actually deploying to try and cushion this blow?
No, they're definitely scrambling, deploying a multi-pronged strategy. The Ministry of Textiles, for instance, they explored fast-tracking free trade agreement negotiations, FTA talks with the European Union. That was just last month.
Trying to open up other big markets.
Exactly. To offset the U.S. market losses, they've also temporarily waived the 11% import duty on cotton. That was from August 19th to September 30th, 2025. Trying to offer some immediate relief to textile manufacturers on the input side.
Okay, short-term relief.
Short-term, yes. Beyond that, they're leading trade missions. Lots of activity targeting the EU, the Gulf countries, East Asia, and exploring these India +1 export hubs.
India +1 hubs? What does that mean?
Basically setting up bases in third countries, perhaps like the UAE or Mexico, to potentially finish goods there and then export to the U.S., bypassing the direct tariffs from India. It's a workaround strategy.
Interesting. So it's a mix of short-term fixes, like the cotton waiver, and longer-term structural changes, like the FTA talks and these India +1 ideas. But how quickly can these things truly reroute an economy of India's scale? Especially when, as you say, some measures seem a bit limited, like that cotton waiver was only 40 days, right? And mainly for long staple cotton, which isn't India's main domestic variety.
You've hit on a crucial point there about the effectiveness. The immediate measures, while helpful gestures, their actual impact is, well, certainly limited in scope and time. Domestically, though, there is a stronger push for deeper reform. The government is revising the goods and services tax, the GST, trying to lower costs for things like insurance, cars, appliances, especially ahead of the Diwali festival season in 2025.
Trying to boost domestic demand, perhaps.
Partly that, and partly easing the burden. They're also discussing more favorable bank loan rates specifically for exporters, making credit cheaper. Anand Mahindra, chairman of the Mahindra Group, he emphasized something important. He said, improving India's overall ease of doing business. India is currently ranked 63rd by the World Bank, which is actually behind Vietnam's 70th, interestingly enough.
Oh, behind Vietnam.
Okay.
Yeah.
He said improving that ranking is India's true shield against tariffs, making the whole system more efficient. And the Global Trade Research Initiative, a think tank, they've also proposed reviving something called the Interest Equalization Scheme.
What does that do?
It essentially subsidizes interest rates for exporters. makes their loans cheaper, which helps make their products more competitive globally. They suggested a significant annual outlay for this to really make export credit more affordable.
Mhm.
These are all about boosting that underlying structural competitiveness.
Okay, so structural reforms are key. Now, zooming out again to the global perspective, these tariffs, they must be actively reshaping international trade dynamics, right? Competitors like Vietnam, Bangladesh, Cambodia, maybe even China and Pakistan, places facing lower or no U.S. tariffs on these goods. They seem clearly poised to gain market share from India.
Absolutely. Vietnam's textile exports to the U.S., as we mentioned, have already outpaced India's. That 20% tariff rate they enjoy gives them a massive advantage now compared to India's effective 60+%.
It's a huge gap.
A huge gap. And stepping back even further to see the broader implications, economists are definitely warning of significant ripples. Goldman Sachs, for instance, estimates these tariffs could shave about zero point 0.6 percentage points off India's GDP growth, reducing it from maybe 7% down to 6% in the 2025-26 fiscal year.
That's a noticeable hit to growth.
It is. And Nobel laureate Paul Krugman, he wrote on his Substack just this month, described the U.S. economic data itself as looking a bit stagflationary. He cautioned that these kinds of tariffs could actually fuel inflation within the U.S. itself, while simultaneously hurting exporting nations like India. So potentially lose-lose.
And what about the average person in India?
Well, for India's vast middle class, maybe 400 million strong, they're already strained by inflation and a weakening rupee. It's around 87.95 to the dollar now. Rising costs from these tariffs or the economic slowdown they cause could further erode their purchasing power.
So this isn't just some abstract economic blip then. It feels like a profound test of resilience, doesn't it? For the industries, for the workers, for the whole nation, really. The ripple effect touches every aspect of daily life for millions.
It truly does. It connects the geopolitical moves directly to the household budget.
So what we've explored today, it paints a pretty clear, if worrying, picture. Down in the heart of Gujarat, that sparkle of diamonds, the hum of textile looms. They're facing this really unprecedented challenge. The livelihoods of millions, the economic path of the entire nation, and that delicate balance of global trade, it all seems to be hanging in the balance right now.
It does, but India has faced serious economic challenges before, and it has consistently emerged stronger, adapted. This tariff shock is undoubtedly a crucial test of its adaptability. It's almost like a forced pivot, isn't it, towards greater self-reliance, maybe, finding new global horizons faster than planned. The immediate impact is severe, no question. But the long-term response, the reforms, the diversification, that will really define India's position in this reordering global economy.
Right. As Prime Minister Modi declared back in Ahmedabad, we will keep increasing our strength to withstand it. Resilience is the key word. But this does leave us with a final, maybe provocative thought for you, our listener. When a nation gets caught in the crossfire of global geopolitics like this, how much can it truly control its own destiny? And perhaps more interestingly, what innovative, maybe entirely new paths will emerge from this period of really intense pressure? Something for you to ponder as you navigate the news and the world around you.